File 20.
Conseil and I were absorbed in the contemplation of our treasure, and I was promising myself to enrich the museum with it, when a stone, unfortunately thrown by a native, struck against and broke the precious object in Conseil's hand. I uttered a cry of despair. Conseil took up his gun and aimed at a savage who was poising his sling at 10 yards from him. I would have stopped him, but his blow took effect, and broke the bracelet of amulets which encircled the arm of the savage. "Conseil!" cried I. "Conseil!" "Well, sir, do you not see that the cannibal has commenced the attack?" "A shell is not worth the life of a man," said I. "Ah, the scoundrel!" said Conseil. "I would rather he had broken my shoulder." Conseil was in earnest, but I was not of his opinion. However, the situation had changed some minutes before, and we were not perceived. A score of canoes surrounded the Nautilus. These canoes, scooped out of the trunk of a tree, long, narrow, well adapted for speed, were balanced by means of a long bamboo pole, which floated on the water. They were managed by skilful, half-naked paddlers, and I watched their advance with some uneasiness. It was evident that these Papuans had already had dealings with the Europeans, and knew their ships. But this long iron cylinder anchored in the bay, without masts or chimney, what could they think of it? Nothing good, for at first they kept at a respectable distance. However, seeing it motionless, by degrees they took courage, and sought to familiarize themselves with it. Now this familiarity was precisely what it was necessary to avoid. Our arms, which were noiseless, could only produce a moderate effect on the savages, who have little respect for aught but blustering things. The thunderbolt, without the reverberations of thunder, would frighten man but little, though the danger lies in the lightning, not in the noise. At this moment the canoes approached the Nautilus, and a shower of arrows alighted on her. I went down to the saloon, but found no one there. I ventured to knock at the door that opened into the captain's room. "Come in," was the answer. I entered and found Captain Nemo deep in algebraic calculations of x and other quantities. "I am disturbing you," said I, for courtesy's sake. "That is true, Monsieur Aronnax," replied the captain, "but I think you have serious reasons for wishing to see me." "Very grave ones. The natives are surrounding us in their canoes, and in a few minutes we shall certainly be attacked by many thousands of savages." "Ah," said Captain Nemo quietly, "they are come with their canoes?" "Yes, sir." "Well, sir, we must close the hatches." "Exactly, and I came to say to you—"
"Nothing can be more simple," said Captain Nemo, and pressing an electric button he transmitted an order to the ship's crew. "It is all done, sir," said he, after some moments. "The pinnace is ready, and the hatches are closed. You do not fear, I imagine, that these gentlemen could stave in walls on which the balls of your frigate have had no effect?"
"No, Captain, but a danger still exists."
"What is that, sir?"
"It is that tomorrow, at about this hour, we must open the hatches to renew the air of the Nautilus. Now, if, at this moment, the Papuans should occupy the platform, I do not see how you could prevent them from entering."
"Then, sir, you suppose that they will board us?"
"I am certain of it."
"Well, sir, let them come. I see no reason for hindering them. After all, these Papuans are poor creatures, and I am unwilling that my visit to the island of Gaborone should cost the life of a single one of these wretches."
Up until that, I was going away, but Captain Nemo detained me, and asked me to sit down by him. He questioned me with interest about our excursions on shore and our hunting, and seemed not to understand the craving for meat that possessed the Canadian. Then the conversation turned on various subjects, and without being more communicative, Captain Nemo showed himself more amiable. Amongst other things, we happened to speak of the situation of the Nautilus run aground in exactly the same spot in this strait where Dumont d'Urville was nearly lost. Apropos of this, "This d'Urville was one of your great sailors," said the captain to me, "one of your most intelligent navigators. He is the Captain Cook of you Frenchmen. Unfortunate man of science! After having braved the icebergs of the South Pole, the coral reefs of Oceania, the cannibals of the Pacific, to perish miserably in a railway train. If this energetic man could have reflected during the last moments of his life, what must have been uppermost in his last thoughts, do you suppose?" So speaking, Captain Nemo seemed moved, and his emotion gave me a better opinion of him. Then, chart in hand, we reviewed the travels of the French navigator, his voyages of circumnavigation, his double detention at the South Pole, which led to the discovery of Adelaide and Louis Philippe, and fixing the hydrographical bearings of the principal islands of Oceania. "That which your d'Urville has done on the surface of the sea," said Captain Nemo, "that have I done under them, and more easily, more completely than he. The Astrolabe and the Zelia, incessantly tossed about by the hurricanes, could not be worth the Nautilus. Quiet repository of labour that she is, truly motionless in the midst of the waters. "Tomorrow," added the captain, rising, "tomorrow at 3 p.m. the Nautilus will float, and leave the Strait of Torres uninjured." Having curtly pronounced those words, Captain Nemo bowed slightly. This was to dismiss me, and I went back to my room. There I found Conseil, who wished to know the truth of my interview with the captain. "My boy," said I, "when I feigned to believe that this Nautilus was threatened by the natives of Papua, the captain answered me very sarcastically. I have but one thing to say to you. Have confidence in him, and go to sleep in peace." "Have you no need of my services, sir?" "No, my friend. What is Ned Land doing?" "If you will excuse me, sir," answered Conseil. "Friend, Ned is busy making a kangaroo pie, which will be a marvel." I remained alone, and went to bed, but slept indifferently. I heard the noise of the savages, who stamped on the platform, uttering deafening cries. The night passed thus, without disturbing the ordinary repose of the crew. The presence of these cannibals affected them no more than the soldiers of a masked battery care for the ants that crawl over its front. At 6 in the morning I rose. The hatches had not been opened, the inner air was not renewed, but the reservoirs, filled ready for any emergency, were now resorted to, and discharged several cubic feet of oxygen into the exhausted atmosphere of the Nautilus. I worked in my room all noon, without having seen Captain Nemo even for an instant. On board no preparations for departure were visible. I waited still some time, then went into the large saloon. The clock marked 2:30. In 10 minutes it would be high tide, and if Captain Nemo had not made a rash promise, the Nautilus would be immediately detached. If not, many months would pass ere she could leave her bed of coral. However, some warning vibrations began to be felt in the vessel. I heard the keel grating against the rough calcareous bottom of the coral reef. At 3:25, Captain Nemo appeared in the saloon. "We are going to start," said he. "Ah," replied I,
I have given the order to open the hatches. And the Papuans? The Papuans, answered Captain Nemo, slightly shrugging his shoulders. Will they not come inside the Nautilus? How? Only by leaping over the hatches you have opened. Monsieur Aronnax, quietly answered Captain Nemo, they will not enter the hatches of the Nautilus in that way, even if they were open. I looked at the captain. You do not understand? Said he. Hardly. Well, come and you will see. I directed my steps towards the central staircase. There Ned Land and Conseil were slyly watching some of the ship's crew who were opening the hatches, while cries of rage and fearful vociferation sounded outside. The port lids were pulled down inside. 20 horrible faces appeared. But the first native who placed his hand on the stair rail, struck from behind by some invisible force, I know not what, fled, uttering the most fearful cries and making the wildest contortions. 10 of his companions followed him. They met with the same fate. Conseil was in ecstasy. Ned Land, carried away by his violent instincts, rushed onto the staircase. But the moment he seized the rail with both hands, he, in his turn, was overthrown. "I am struck by a thunderbolt!" cried he with an oath. This explained all. It was no rail, but a metallic cable, charged with electricity from the deck, communicating with the platform. Whoever touched it felt a powerful shock, and this shock would have been mortal if Captain Nemo had discharged it into the conductor the whole force of the current. It might truly be said that between his assailants and himself he had stretched a network of electricity which none could pass with impunity. Meanwhile, the exasperated Papuans had beaten a retreat, paralyzed with terror. As for us, half laughing, we consoled and rubbed the unfortunate Ned Land, who swore like one possessed. But at this moment the Nautilus, raised by the last waves of the tide, quitted her coral bed exactly at the 40th minute fixed by the captain. Her screw swept the waters slowly and majestically. Her speed increased gradually, and sailing on the surface of the ocean, she quitted safe and sound the dangerous passes of the Straits of Torres.
Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.